to order of the Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities. Good afternoon, everyone. We gather today to study the Supplementary Estimates B for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2018, referred to the committee on Thursday, October the 26th, 2017. We have 9 votes to consider today, namely Vote 1B under the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority, Vote 1B, 5B, 15B, and 20B under the Department of Transport, Vote 1B under Marine Atlantic Incorporated, Votes 1B and 5B for the Office of Infrastructure Canada, and Vote 1B under the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority. On behalf of the Department of Transport, we have before us Mr. André Lapointe, Assistant Deputy Minister, Corporate Services and Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Pierre-Marc Mongeau, Assistant Deputy Minister, Programs, and Ms. Laurie MacDonald, Assistant Deputy Minister, Safety and Security. Welcome to you all. For the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority, we have Mr. Mike Saunders, President and Chief Executive Officer, along with Ms. Andy Andre, Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. Finally, on behalf of Marine Atlantic Inc., we have Mr. Paul Griffin, President and Chief Executive Officer. We welcome everyone to our committee today and thank you for coming. I'll start the discussion by calling Vote 1B under the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority. Mr. Lapointe, over to you for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for inviting us here today to discuss Transport Canada's Supplementary Estimates B for 2017-18. Au cours de cette année, la priorité de Transport Canada demeure la sécurité.
Transport Canada's focus for the coming year remains the safety and security of our transportation system. At the same time, we have an important role to play in advancing innovation in the transportation sector. Ensuring we have the infrastructure and the services in place to facilitate the movement of people and goods. We also need to adapt to climate change, reduce air pollution, and embrace new technologies to improve greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector.
Vision for the future of transportation up to 2030. Transport Canada is working to implement that vision through programs and initiatives that are centered around 5 key themes. Enhancing the experience of the Canadian traveller, building a safer, more secure transportation system that earns the confidence of Canadians, investing in a greener, more innovative transportation sector that embraces new technologies to improve Canadians' lives, protecting Canada's waterways, coasts, and the north, and improving Canada's transportation infrastructure and trade corridors to get products to global markets more efficiently. Through our supplementary estimates, Transport Canada is seeking a total of $72.5 million in funding to help support some of these goals. Of this amount, over half is for investments in transportation services and infrastructure and the development of environmentally sustainable transportation. We are requesting $47.5 million in new funding announced in Budget 2017 for 4 key initiatives. The Ferry Service Contribution Program, which provides funding to support interprovincial ferry transportation in Atlantic Canada and Eastern Quebec. Implementing the Trade and Transportation Corridor Initiative, which will support investments in infrastructure and measures to support innovative transportation, adapting to the effects of climate change and reducing Canada's greenhouse gas emissions, and for the Indigenous Advisory and Monitoring Committee for Energy Infrastructure Projects. Our request also includes $24.3 million in existing funding that is being carried forward from the last fiscal year to 17-18 to match the department's level of funding with expected spending this year. In addition, a number of transfers to other departments for various programs will reduce Transport Canada's spending by $900,000. Finally, there's an item of $1.6 million for statutory employee benefit plan costs related to the projects I've mentioned, and an internal transfer of $200,000 to allow the listing of the Grant for Northern Transportation Adaptation Initiative. En résumé, le financement dont j'ai fait mention aujourd'hui.
To sum up, the funding I have outlined today will allow Transport Canada to continue delivering on its mandate, supporting government priorities, and ensuring that we are prudent and responsible in managing our resources. Madam Chair, my colleagues and I are happy to answer any questions the committee might have. Thank you.
Point. Mr. Griffin, I understand you have some opening remarks.
Yes, I do. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Chair, I'd like to thank you and members of the committee for your invitation to the meeting today. As a background for those of you unfamiliar with Marine Atlantic, we're a Crown corporation that was created to fulfill Canada's constitutional mandate to provide a freight and passenger ferry service between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. We report to Parliament through Transport Canada. Our objective is to provide a safe, reliable, and efficient ferry service. We operate on two routes. Our primary route is between Port aux Basques and North Sydney. It's about a 200-kilometre route. We also operate a seasonal ferry service between Argentia, Newfoundland, and North Sydney that covers approximately 500 kilometres. In Budget 2016, the Government of Canada announced $21.7 million for improvements to Marine Atlantic's terminal infrastructure in both North Sydney and Port aux Basques that would improve the safety, reliability, and efficiency of its operations. The infrastructure funding covers three projects. The first is the replacement of a storm sewer system in Port aux Basques Terminal. This project was required to replace infrastructure that was at the end of its useful life and created periodic interruptions to our operations. The budget for this project totaled $5.3 million, $1.7 million in 2015-16, and $3.6 million in 2017-18. This project will be completed on time and on budget. The second project involved the replacement of dock fenders in both North Sydney and Port aux Basques. Fender systems protect both vessels and dock infrastructure from damage caused by vessels when docking. The older fender system was inadequate and created unnecessary risk for the corporation. The budget for this project totaled $8.4 million, expenditures of $2.4 million in 2016-17, and $6 million in 2017-18. This project will also be completed on time and on budget. The third project, which is the subject of the supplementary estimates, will provide an automated mooring solution for the primary docks at both North Sydney and Port aux Basques. Our current mooring operations involve a significant amount of manual intervention, and this creates safety risks that can be mitigated with the new automated system. The initial budget for this project totaled $8 million, $2 million in 2016-17, and $6 million in 2017-18. Automated mooring systems are highly specialized and engineered to meet the requirements of specific vessels and specific dock configurations. Upon initiating the project, we realized that we had underestimated the time required to engineer a solution and select a supplier. Because of these delays in selecting an appropriate system, we were unable to spend any of the budgeted funds for this project in 2016-17. As such, in Supplementary Estimates B, 2017-18, we're requesting reprofiling of $2 million for this project from 2016-17 to 2017-18. The remaining $269,000 requested to be reprofiled was regular operating capital, not spent in 2016-17, that will help supplement the mooring budget in 2017-18. Our intention is to finish this project completely by the end of 2017-18. Madam Chair, I would be happy to answer any questions related to our request.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Griffin. On for 6 minutes to Ms. Block.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I want to thank all of the departmental officials and our folks from CATSA for joining us today. And before I ask my questions, I do want to congratulate you on being one of the parliamentarians of the year for providing mentorship to other colleagues, and so I congratulate you on that. So my questions are going to be directed to CATSA first. It is my understanding that airlines are required to register and collect the air traveler's security charge. However, in Bill C-49, we know that CATSA will be allowed to enter into a contract with airports, both designated and non-designated airports, in order to provide additional screening services on a cost recovery basis. How will airports pay for this additional cost? Can you comment on that?
Yes. Pardon me, I've got a rather bad cold, but There are currently 2 airports paying for, through a cost recovery process, both Toronto and Vancouver, and they raise that through their airport improvement fees. They pay out of their own funds generated by the airport.
Thank you. So in the 2016-2017 fiscal year, the government collected $768 million from the air traveler security charge. Is that correct?
From our understanding, that would be, yes, correct.
Okay, and so according to CATSA's 2017 annual report, government funding amounted to just over $673 million. Is that correct?
Is that correct, Andy, on that one?
Government funding for 2016-17 amounted to $617 million on the operating side, capital of 142 for a total of 759.
Okay, so in Sub-B, the proposed authorities to date being requested by CATSA is $760,684,214. Do you have a way of forecasting or estimating what amount the government will collect from the air traveler security charge?
We don't have access to that information. That is collected by the Finance Department through CRA.
And you don't have access to that?
We don't have access to that.
Okay, so can you tell me, is the air traveler security charge used to fund any other air security measures?
If I may, I think we should defer that to Transport Canada.
Okay, I will put that question to Transport Canada.
Thank you. So part of the air traveler security charge that is collected flows back to the department for certain activities, namely related to air security. The exact amount that flows back, I don't have with me. I can get back to you on that.
Okay, I would appreciate that. And so I look at what's in the Supplementary B estimates today, and it is my understanding that with the adjustment, this is still less than what was collected last year. Is that correct?
Again, the full collection, I don't have the numbers of. This is done by reviewed by the Department of Finance.
So you can't answer that question for me?
No, I'm afraid I cannot.
Okay, well, thank you. I think I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. I wanted to refer to a Canadian Press article on October the 29th, and I'll just read the first sentence of this news article, and then we can delve into the details behind it. It said, Transport Canada is planning to stop evaluating pilots who perform checks on their counterparts at the country's largest airlines and will instead give the responsibility to the operators, a change critics say erodes oversight and public safety. So, who among you can respond to this and tell us what's going on? Ms. McDonald?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The Check Pilot program actually in Transport Canada has been around for about 30 years now, and very clearly the intent is to continue with that program. So first and foremost, the program's not ending, but in fact Transport Canada is going to enhance that program, so taking the resources that we have now and using them in a more effective and efficient way. What that will do for us is actually enhance the safety and security that our pilots have in terms of their responsibilities, and at the same time provide us a more robust system that we can do in terms of checking pilots. So specifically what happens is we have a set of inspectors who go out and test pilots at yearly or every 2 years when they come up for their annual testing period. Sometimes it's our inspectors that do it, and sometimes it's checked pilot program people that we use from our industry. They receive the same amount of training that our pilots do to do this particular responsibility, and we do that so that we can broaden our area of scope in terms of being able to use more resources. Transport Canada has right now approximately 1,200, 1,300 inspectors, of which about 675 are responsible for civil aviation. So we look at all those resources and then we focus them on the tasks that they need to do. So in fact, we're not cutting any resources. We're not changing the program in terms of the amount of assessment that gets done, but we're focusing it on the key high-risk areas to ensure that we have the safest and most secure aviation system.
So what would be the ratio of tests done by Transport Canada versus the check pilots?
I don't have that broken down in terms of numbers because they're all trained to the same level to be able to do the same type of testing, regardless of whether you are a check pilot working in industry or you're an inspector working for Transport Canada.
So previously, or at least to this point, all of them, Transport Canada or with the airlines themselves, would have had evaluations done how often?
Depending on the pilot and the type of plane they're flying, it could be every year, it could be every 2 years. And this is a type of program that's actually used around the world, so it's not just a Canadian phenomenon to use this check pilot program and to use industry and a combination of both Transport Canada inspectors and others. It's common in the United States and in Europe and so on.
But do they continue to check their check pilots and government inspectors?
Absolutely. In fact, we also test our checked pilots. So the people doing the testing, we actually have an oversight program for them as well to ensure that they're at their optimal in terms of doing the test.
What's changing here?
The actual change is that we're focusing more on high-risk areas. So one of the advantages that we have is that we've collected data over several years. And what that tells us is in our very low-risk areas, we have a very high percentage of conformity, meaning that there's very few error rates. But what we see is that in more higher risk areas, we want to pay more attention to them to ensure that we're testing pilots in a fashion that we can catch those kinds of errors, look at any kinds of trends that are happening, and adjust them in terms of the testing.
So what I hear is that the check pilots continue to perform very well with a very, very low error rate, but that you've identified areas of higher risk. Now, what would they be?
It would depend on the pilot. It could be anything from how they use the equipment. Of course, aircraft are evolving. New aircraft come in. There's new consoles. There's new types of equipment in the flying program. So we look at what is the error rates with this new equipment. We look at how they respond to training and stress situations in simulators, and then we look at how do they respond to those and see what we see with respect to trends and how well they perform in those kinds of situations.
How would you respond to folks who would say, you know, we're leaving the fox to guard the hen house here if we're actually, you know, if you like, subletting the authority of Transport Canada to the airlines to monitor themselves? What do you say in terms of public confidence in that process?
I would say a couple of things. I think it's important to recognize because it's a program that's used around the world. There's confidence in airlines, like-minded countries like Canada, who use this program. It is very robust. But I also think it's important to take a look at what evidence is out there. So as an example, the Transportation Safety Board presented a report to Parliament last year that showed that there was, over the past 10 years, a 25% reduction rate in accidents. And that's a large part due to the kind of robust oversight that Transport Canada has put in place, including this checked pilot program.
It's 40 seconds.
Oh, okay. No, I think that's enough for now.
Thank you. Mr. Oban, welcome back. We missed having you at committee.
C'est tout à fait réciproque, Madame la Présidente.
We've missed you as well. Thank you for your welcome. And I'd also like to say that I'm happy to see my colleagues again. Well, I'd just like to say that in the second part of this meeting, we will be receiving the Minister of Infrastructure, which is very appropriate. But I'm sad to see that in the first hour, the Minister of Transport will not be with us to answer questions. It will be particularly relevant since then we could get an answer about the motion that I tabled a few days ago regarding the fact that the Minister of Transport and the VP of Air Transport at Transport Canada could come and speak to us about the issues raised by our excellent study on air transport security. Do you want us to vote on that now, or should we keep it for the end of our meeting today in order to ensure that we have a maximum of time with the witnesses?
Vote on it at the end of our meeting, Mr. Oban, just so that we have the officials for the maximum amount of time.
Alors, je compte bien qu'on la vote à la fin de la réunion.
So then we will vote on it at the end of the meeting. Very well. And I will now move on to my questions. I have several questions. My first questions are for Katza. I'll try to ask quick questions, and I'd like to get quick answers, please. So $721 million were collected through the air passengers security fee. However, 678 million have been returned. What about the difference between these two sums? Does that go into the government's consolidated fund? And do you think this financial model is viable long term when you consider the increase in air transport traffic?
Je ne pense pas qu'on puisse vraiment.
I don't think that we can comment on this or on whether it's appropriate or not to have this type of funding model. We do not have any direct link with the amount of money that we collect. Can Transport Canada comment on this process? Are you speaking about the way the charge is distributed? Yes, I'm talking about the difference between the amount raised using the air traveler security charge. I'm talking about the fact that not all that money is spent on security. How is it that part of this amount is used for other purposes and that we're being asked for further monies in order to offer security services, even though not the entirety of the charge is used for that? Well, this is an issue that we are familiar with. The adjustment between the amount raised and the amount spent, we examine that regularly. For now, this is something the government is considering. We don't yet know what the result will be, but it is under study. We heard the Minister of Transport say on multiple occasions that security was their #1 priority. But my question is, how can Canadians believe this when we consider that between 2012 and today, the Liberal government appears to have continued the policy adopted by the Conservatives, annual recurring cuts in the area of security, which means that in the 2015-16 and 2016-17 years, there has been a 12% cut. So how can we really feel that security measures are robust when we're seeing cuts year after year? Are you referring to Transport Department cuts? I'm talking about the budget specifically earmarked for air security. Well, when it comes to air transport security, budgets fluctuate from one year to the next. There are projects that are completed and come to an end. Research projects, for example, initiatives are taken, capital investments are made, and when those periods come to an end, the sums will tend to go down from one year to the next. That partially explains the fluctuations in our budget. There are fluctuations, but there's also an overall trend which shows a decrease in monies over 5 or 6 years, especially considering that the aviation market is constantly growing and needs are also growing. When I consider the resources dedicated to monitoring, we see an increase in that over time. We also reassign our resources on occasion. Earlier, Ms. McDonald talked about reassignment according to the risks. When there are higher risks, we reassign resources to those risks. And those resources tend to diminish when the risks are lower. I'd like to now ask a question to Ms. McDonald, because earlier I was very interested by your observations. I'd like to better understand what's behind this bureaucratic language. When it comes to checking pilots, Transport Canada seems to be doing more and more paper inspections, or gets other inspectors to do these checks rather than itself checking pilots Thank you for the question.
Way over the time.
Yes. In fact, we are doing more inspections in person. So a quick example would be we have 2 very new simulators, and that we actually bring our pilots in and we observe them doing their training in person over a course of 4 hours to a day, so that we can actually see what they're doing in a real live situation. So we always have a combination of hands-on training that we're testing, as well as oversight training.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Aubin, your time is up. Mr. Fraser?
Merci, Madame la Présidente. J'ai juste une question pour Monsieur Lapointe, très bref.
Thank you. I have a quick question for Mr. Lapointe.
Passing the interprovincial ferry services in Atlantic Canada, I'm curious if the estimates, supplementing estimates, deal with the Caribou Wood Island service, and if you could provide a brief status update on the process to award the long-term service contract to a provider for that key link.
Okay, so the funding we're requesting here is for the funding for the current year for the 3 Atlantic services going to Northumberland Ferries, Bay Ferries, and CTMA. And for the longer term, that is still being reviewed.
Okay. C'est mon seule question. Je voudrais offrir mon temps.
Next, well, that's the end of my question, so I'd like to offer the rest of my time to Mr. Aubin. If you have more questions about the Czech Pilots program. Well, I have other questions to pose to CATSA, and there's one in particular. We saw in C49 that for all regional airports, as well as designated airports, but specifically for small airports, like in my riding in Trois-Rivières, if they want to get security services, for example, for international charter flights, that needs to be done on a cost recovery basis. Have you been able to evaluate what that represents for a regional airport, cost recovery? Yes. We've already set up a system with 10 or 12 airports that wish to become designated. We have set up meetings and prepared documents in order to explain the steps necessary to be designated by Transport Canada. Could that process be tabled with the committee to better understand, so we can better understand the scope or what that means in terms of an increase in cost of tickets for a regional airport to offer the service? Yes, we can certainly give this information to the clerk of the committee. For example, when it comes to the costs. Thank you. Now, coming back to the votes, you're asking for 29 million. Okay, in 2016-17, and I'm looking at your business plan, where it states that CATSA receives 29 million in additional funding in the 2016 budget in order to maintain their level of service at about 85% of passengers being checked in less than 15 minutes, which is the standard. Now, you are requesting 25 million. So my question is, how can you maintain the same service standard, 85%, that is to say, or even increase this percentage if you're asking for less money this year than last year? We made our calculations this year, and based on the models and information that we used, 25 million, 0.3 million is enough to keep at 85% for this year. And you don't have a goal of increasing the proportion to eventually have 90 or 95% of passengers checked in that time? Well, our budget is given to us by Parliament, so if we have more money, that will definitely change wait times. So if I understand correctly, you were not asked to increase that target of 85%, since you said that your calculations show that with 25 million you should be able to reach the target of 85%. Well, for this year, we're working closely with Transport Canada to consider options going forward. Very good. So what has changed in your methods to allow you to reach the same percent target with 25 million as you were able to do last year with 29 million? Well, our models have a 3% margin of error, so that could partially explain it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few questions to everyone seated. Thank you for being here. First question has to do with your budgeting and of course, your year-over-year budgeting when it comes to managing your assets. I'm hearing that your forecasts and the actual work that you're doing are becoming more volatile. I'm assuming one of the reasons why you're asking for less a year after a year is because you may have had surpluses that you had in reserves that you can now apply to capital projects. My first question to that is, have you established asset management reserve accounts looking after the life cycle, therefore the repair and maintenance and ultimate replacement of your assets? Have you actually established those accounts to therefore be more consistent and sustainable with respect to the finances you're requiring to look after management of those assets?
So in terms of capital budgets, we have a sort of a yearly a yearly base of about 57 million for capital renewal and investment, and we have a 5-year investment plan that is renewed periodically, where we map out our needs and investments and look across the system for what we need to invest. But we don't have reserves per se. So we have a regular influx of capital investment money. So that goes to airports, ports. It also goes to our IT infrastructure within the department.
So would you find it, especially as it relates to your forecasts, your 5-10-year forecasts, would you find it more advantageous, instead of coming back year after year in this environment, asking for capital funding, would you find it a lot more better planning, sustainable, smarter planning to actually ask or then create through your operating budget a contribution that would otherwise go to capital accounts, so that therefore that work can be done?
We have, in addition to the base budget we have every year, we've had, if you look back, we've got a number of periodic influxes of infrastructure money above and beyond. So that permits us to accelerate the renewal or the construction of some of our assets on the ports and airports side. So that's been extremely helpful. We've had 2 influxes in the last 5 or 6 years, which has permitted us to accelerate some of our renewal. So in terms of planning ahead, I think our investment plan does a good job of forecasting what we'll need when. And in addition to our regular capital, the additional capital that comes in is sufficient for our requirements.
And just a comment to that before I go to my next question, and this is just my opinion, and what do I know compared to what you folks know who are in business every day, but it may be advantageous to look at that forecasting being the basis of your operating contributions to a capital reserve, that then would create a discipline to be strictly focused on what contributions have to be made versus not, and then therefore the asset crumbling, and of course not being sustainable, and therefore driving against the revenues that can be foreseen to offset the ultimate cost through that forecast 5-10 years down the road. An example of that is the St. Lawrence Seaway. When you look at the condition of the St. Lawrence Seaway today, if a proper asset management plan would have been disciplined and followed in the same fashion, it would have more than likely drove a lot more revenues to help offset the overall costs of both the asset itself in terms of capital, as well as bringing down the cost of operating for those that are using the asset on an annual basis. To that end, in 1974, as you may know, a bridge came down in the Welland Canal, which is a portion of the St. Lawrence Seaway, dissecting a community that would be the city of Thorold. When that bridge came down, they then started a ferry service, which I won't say ultimately took care of the challenge of crossing over the canal in one city, but it helped. Right now, that ferry service is being looked at, although there's been a 1 or 2 year, I believe, extension. to the ferry service. They're looking at actually taking it out after that, and or at least funding it for the folks down in the city of Thorold. My question is this something that Transport Canada is looking at, should be looking at, and ultimately the request as part of my constituency is to maintain that service, albeit running since 1974, well into the future, so that therefore this community can be more close together versus dissected apart, with the Welland Canal being a part of that city. Again, dissecting the city right down the middle.
I have to say I'm not familiar with that service. Is it provincial, or and pretty certain it's not federal?
Well, it's federal.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. That's news to me. So
what I can do, in fairness, Mr. LaPointe, what I can do is I can get you some information on it, but ultimately the intent here is to sustain that funding, so that therefore the service can be again sustained, and they can have an easier time to travel throughout the community versus having to travel, especially if they're pedestrians or bicyclists, travel around a loop that's miles versus simply crossing the canal, which is in their backyard.
On to Mr. Lau.
Very much. First question I have is, and forgive me if this has already been brought up, it's the $25.3 million. And I'm not sure if you mentioned, but I didn't see that in your notes, but what exactly will that money go towards?
The $25.3 million would be devoted to our pre-board screening, which is essentially what most people are familiar with in terms of CATSA services, where you go to the security checkpoint. So that would be operating funds that would augment all the checkpoints across the country.
Okay, so that's the money that goes into funding the staff that are there. Is that the idea?
The labor.
The
yes.
labor? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so take, for example, the case of Pearson Airport in Vancouver. I think Ms. Block mentioned it, that they are now paying for labor as well as what is already provided. So this $25.3 million, will any of that money go back into Pearson and Vancouver, or do these go to the other airports?
The money that we receive, the appropriations we receive, are received so that we can maintain an 85-15 service level, which means 85% of the passengers will be screened in 15 minutes or less. In the case of GTAA in Vancouver, they'd like a higher service level, so they come to us with what they would like, and they pay for additional screening services.
Okay, just on that 85-15 number, is that calculation over a 24-hour period? Is that how you calculate that?
No, it's done on an annual basis per airport. So it's not done on a 24-hour basis, no.
No, but I'm saying it includes all 24 hours of the day.
Yes.
Okay. So do you have numbers that you can identify each hour to see how your performance is? Do you have those numbers?
I would say I believe we do, yes.
So is that a document that you could share with the committee? It can't be a private number. It must be a public number, is it?
I think that's something we can share, yes.
Because I would venture a guess that 85-15 is pretty achievable, because I'm sure all members of this committee have traveled all areas and hours of the night and day. And I would argue from evening hours into the late flights that it's probably a couple minutes to get through security. But I have also, and some of my colleagues I'm sure have walked through the front door of Terminal 1 at Pearson on a Monday morning, and certainly I don't know if ever between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. it's ever been 85-15. So I'm just wondering, be curious what those numbers are, if you could table those to the...
Yeah, I think, sir, you're referring to the peak hours, and those are a little bit different, but it's all factored into the 85-15 that we're seeking as a target annually.
Thank you. Again, I don't know, maybe you can't talk about this, or you don't want to, or you can't, but the repaving of the Pearson Airport of runway 0523, is that how you pronounce it?
Sir, it would have nothing to do with CATSA. That's not within our mandate.
But to the committee that's here, can anybody comment on that?
That would be under the airport authority. So
okay.
we wouldn't have a line of sight on that at all.
But does Transport Canada not have any say in that at all?
No, that's under the operations of the airport are managed by the airport authority.
Fair enough, but the Minister of Transport is responsible for travel in this country, and there were over 1,000 flights canceled or delayed due to that runway. So when they are going to repave a runway as vital as that one, is there no discussion between Transport Canada and the airport authority? Is that what you're telling me?
No, there wouldn't be.
So is that an opportunity, do you think, that there could be some corrections made in the future on timing or what have you? Because ultimately, as a consumer, you know, we are discussing in the House of Commons here about the Transportation Act and the modernization of traveling and making it much more efficient. And to me, as just a regular guy walking the streets, I would say that would be something that the Minister of Transport and the airport authority should be working in conjunction with, because that was a disaster this spring. And it's, maybe I'm naive, but to think that the minister has no information or no discussions with Air Canada himself and the authority, I think is a little surprising.
Thank you for the question. I'll just add that through our safety and security area and working with our civil aviation experts and our aviation security experts as well, we have a constant dialogue with airports across the country and with varying airlines on issues. In those conversations, we talk to them about the impacts of the airport, but we don't direct things such as when and how they would pave a landing strip as an example. However, we do have conversations about the things that are happening, and we give input and provide thoughts and our advice on certain issues.
Well, back to CATSA then. Okay.
I'm sorry, your time is up. On to Mr. Hardy.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to take advantage of the fact that we have some Transport Canada officials here to look for some information that you probably won't have, but I'll ask you to supply it to us. It has to do with a study that we're doing right now on the tanker moratorium off the North Coast. And one question that has come up a few times has to do with the threshold amount of oil that can be barged between communities in that area. Right now, the legislation is proposing a threshold of 12,500 tons. We've heard from several witnesses that that's an awful lot of oil to have on a tanker, or on a barge, I should say, and isn't necessary. The average village up that way, when it's being replenished, needs maybe 3,200 tons. So I'm wondering if somebody can get back to us with the rationale where that threshold number of 12,500 tons came from.
We'll certainly take that back.
The other piece of this, though, would hopefully start showing up on your budgets fairly soon. Transport Canada will have obligations to enforce. In other words, if a ship enters the zone, it needs to be checked to make sure it has doesn't have the wrong type of material on board, or too much of the wrong type of material. Have there been any provisions made to improve Transport Canada's capacity to enforce in that area?
Thank you for the question. I can maybe start and then turn it back to my colleague in terms of any numbers or costs. Earlier I spoke about the oversight program that we have in place and the inspection program. So we also have responsibility for marine safety and security, and as part of that program we have a strong oversight system as well, and at this time we have approximately 350 oversight personnel in place. And much like our civil aviation program, what we do is we take a look at where do we channel our resources and in what particular area, and to focus on those higher risk areas. We also have a center of expertise for enforcement. And as part of that center of expertise for enforcement, we work very closely with oversight to ensure that, in fact, what we see, what we're assessing, we then have a capacity to put measures in place to address any of those issues.
But that's not the question.
Okay.
It has to do with what you see and what you assess. And do you have the capacity to see and assess what's going on the ocean outside of Prince Rupert?
At this time, we have sufficient resources to carry out our oversight and our enforcement program, and we can come back to you. I'll turn to my colleague there to determine if there's one specifically identified for that program.
Last year, we had an opportunity to visit Lac Megantic and look at the situation there. There are two issues. First of all is the status of the rail bypass that community has been looking for quite some time. And there was also ongoing questions, deep concerns in fact, about the level of rail inspections and railway inspections. Again, do you have the capacity to actually go out and examine short-line railroads such as that one and determine whether or not they're being operated and maintained in a safe way, and as well, what is the status of the bypass of Lac Megantic?
So on the first question with respect to the bypass, there's a number of studies that have taken place with respect to that. A decision hasn't been taken at this time, working very closely with the community. As you can appreciate, there's a number of lenses that have come on to this conversation with respect to what is the most appropriate for the community. And so those conversations continue. With respect to the rail safety, we actually have a robust system in place at this time, both with rail safety inspection and with our transportation of dangerous goods, who've increased significantly in terms of their oversight and the processes put in place with respect to monitoring the transportation of dangerous goods, and including research and education with the rail safety program, and with those people working in direct contact with rail safety and the transportation of dangerous goods.
Now, with respect to the direct contact with the people, working in the industry, again, how much of that is on-the-ground inspections versus SMS audits?
We are on the ground doing inspections every day across the country on rail safety systems, and we're constantly doing SMS audits.
More of what? More SMS. I mean, we get the impression that the needle has swung more to the SMS audit and away from on-the-ground inspections. Is that the case?
I wouldn't say so. I don't have the numbers in front of me to show you the difference with respect to how much of each, but I would say to you that we work very closely with the rail safety, with the railways, and with our rail safety program to ensure that there are inspections, real live inspections taking place on rail every day, both ourselves and the railway companies themselves.
Thank you.
Mr. Chong?
I'll pass my time to somebody else who has questions on this matter.
Sure. I will follow up just the previous comments in terms of the robust system in the transportation of dangerous goods. I'm sure you're aware that in C49 there is an exclusion clause when it comes to, now I want to get this right, THIs or TIHs. And I'm wondering why an exclusion clause like that would have been put into that bill. We moved an amendment to have it removed because it didn't address the concerns around captive shippers who are shipping dangerous goods or chemicals that are considered dangerous. And so I'm wondering if we have a robust system in the transportation of dangerous goods. We know we have another piece of legislation that governs that. Why would we need to have an exclusion put into C49?
Sorry, I don't have that clause in front of me. I can't reference it off the top of my head right now, but I would say to you that the transportation of dangerous goods systems is constantly evolving, and we're always looking at ways to improve that, including research, working with other countries on research, working with industry, and looking to improve the system. But I can get some information on that particular clause and come back to you.
Okay, thank you. Ben, did you want to follow up on the question that you wanted to continue with the 25?
I can.
Okay.
I can. How much time do I have there, Chair?
You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Can anybody comment on the genesis of the in the transportation renewal on the voice and video recorders? Can anybody comment on that? you can comment on that?
Your question.
Okay. The Transportation Safety Board, did they recommend that those be installed?
Yes, they did.
Okay. And who will manage the data that is collected on both the video and the voice?
So it'll be a combination. We will regulate exactly what the requirements will be for putting the system in place, the type of equipment to be purchased, how the data will be collected, and what parameters will be around that. The data will be used both by Transport Canada and the Transportation Safety Board in different fashions, as well as railway companies. There's different parameters around each of those pieces, including things like random sampling of the data that's available, but solely for the purpose of determining safety issues with respect to.
Then I think that brings up an interesting point. The information that's collected, will it be stored on a Transport Canada server, or will it be stored on a CN Rail, CP Rail server?
The company will own the equipment and the data that's collected, but there will be very specific privacy framework around the use of that data.
Who is it? The railways that pay for the recording systems?
That's correct.
And Transport Canada doesn't pay for any of that?
No, the companies will pay for that.
And how will you ensure, because the primary purpose, or the only purpose, I guess, for this was to ensure that in the case of a crash, there's further information to be able to review. Is that correct?
Well, there's more than one purpose for it. That is one purpose for sure, to be able to review what happened in the case of an accident, as we've seen in many cases where there's serious accidents, particularly where there's fatalities. I can think of one a few years ago, and I think it was in the Brampton area, where all 3 people in the locomotive were killed. It was very difficult to determine what happened in that situation. So certainly the Transportation Safety Board would want to use that information investigation.
You also said in your statement that you believe that companies like CP Rail and CN Rail will be able to use that data for like a spot check auditing for safety. Is that correct?
I wouldn't use that language. I would say that they can use that information that's pulled randomly to make determinations with respect to identifying trends, issues that they may be seeing in the cab that have an impact on direct safety of the program. So the
outside. Okay.
We're running out of time again. Mr. O'Brien, we have 2 minutes left.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. J'aimerais revenir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now let us return to the issue of air security. Earlier, I mentioned a 12% cut between 2015-16 and 2016-17. And I want to better understand where these cuts have been made. Is it training? Is it inspection costs that have had to be reduced because of this 12%? Well, with regard to civil aviation security, yes. Well, the precise details, I can get back to you with that. When it comes to the fluctuations in the amounts from one year to the next. However, as I mentioned earlier, there are often situations where a project ends from one year to the next, and so the funds are reduced. But if we look at our inspection numbers, as well as the monitoring staff numbers, that has stayed stable or even increased. So should I understand that despite 12% cuts, no services have been affected? Well, I'll get back to you on the 12%. I don't have the details with me. I'll get back to you on that. Nonetheless, if there's a situation where there are budget cuts, which is something that happens, then we tend to reassign staff to the most high-risk areas. That's something we do regularly. I'll get back to you with the details. And now, a very specific question. If you have the answer, so much the better. If not, we'll have to look for it. Training an inspector who is able to supervise pilots, how many hours are given over to that at Transport Canada? So you're speaking about Czech pilots. Well, to train an inspector in the department, that can take 6 to 8 months. Someone from industry, for example. To train them and tell them about the regulations, they are already familiar because they worked in the industry, so they already know the rules, necessarily. But for the Czech pilots, we would have to get back to you on the specifics about how long it takes to train Czech pilots. But generally, if you look at the different modes of transport, maritime, rail, air transport, the periods of time may vary, but there are mandatory trainings on regulations, on investigations, and so on. If I understand correctly, the pilots that you train at Transport Canada arrive to the position with some expertise already. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, pilots who are hired by a private company and who do that same kind of work checking pilots in the company, do they have to do that same kind of training before they start their work? I can't give you an answer yet. I will get back to you on that.
Mr. O'Batten, your time is up. I want to very much thank our witnesses today. It's been very helpful. Has anyone got anything? Everybody's comfortable? Fine. Thank you all very much for the information. There were several things asked. If you could report back through the clerk so that the committee would have that information, we would appreciate it. All right, so thank you very much to all our witnesses. They're welcome to Mr. Sican, yes.
Sorry, did you ask do we have time for a question?
Do you have one short question?
Very short question.
Okay, one short question and a short answer.
To Mr. Lapointe, it was, you mentioned that there's funding or that you're taking care of air pollution as well. And I just wanted maybe a quick answer of what initiatives you've taken to address air pollution.
Okay, thank you. So one of the if we look in the main estimates, new funding, we've got funding to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. If you look down in the list, it's 349,000. That's for this year. It's to start work on retrofits for heavy-duty vehicles, and that work is ongoing. We will be working with the provinces and other departments in the federal system to address that.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you to the witnesses for coming. We are just waiting for our next officials to come, so you're free to leave and we'll reset and refocus ourselves here. Mr. O'Ban, do you want to, while we're waiting for witnesses to switch, I haven't suspended, do you want to talk to your motion now or will we wait until
On peut le faire maintenant?
5:15?
Oui, on peut le faire maintenant si vous voulez.
Do that now, if that's agreeable to you. I'll be brief. I think the first hour we've had here with the department representatives have left us with even more questions than before, more questions and answers. So I think it's important that we receive the Minister of Transport as well as François Collins, Director, National Operations and Civil Aviation at Transport Canada, to appear before the committee regarding the decision by Transport Canada to transfer responsibility for assessing pilot proficiency to airlines. That's the text of my motion. And what we can see here is that numerous questions have gone unanswered. Unfortunately, we didn't have time for me to ask all my questions because I had more. We've been told that many countries are adopting the same methods. The article that Mr. Hardy mentioned, as well as others that I have read, in fact seems to imply the opposite of what we've heard. It seems like Canada is adopting its own lone wolf approach on this. So, in order to have greater continuity with the study on air security we did, or on air safety rather, I think it would be quite important to get clear answers on this question. And that's why I would ask for my colleagues' support in order to be able to invite the Minister, Mr. Collins, about this.
Now or at 15?
Oui.
Yes, okay. So everyone, any further discussion, questions? Yes, Ms. Block.
I just want to state my support for Mr. Oban's motion. I think there have been a number of concerns raised in regards to this issue from various stakeholders that I know I've had the opportunity to meet, was interviewed on this issue, and would support him in this motion.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion, Mr. Hardy?
I would just note that we've just had an opportunity to ask questions. I did. Mr. Oban, you used some of your time. Ms. Block and others didn't. My guess is that we've actually received the information, the essential elements of the information that we needed. Now, whether or not we agree with it is another matter, but it's maybe an issue that we can take up in future studies, because these people will be back, that's for sure.
All right. Can I call all those in favor of Mr. Oban's motion, please raise your hands. Opposed? Does not carry. Thank you. So I'm not suspending the talk. I don't have enough. Continue on with our witnesses in order to not lose too much time. We have a vote at the end on our amendments, and so I don't want to take that time away from the committee's opportunity to ask you questions since you're here. So, Minister Sohi, welcome. Thank you very much to you and to your officials. So we will now continue with our study of Supplementary Estimates B for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2018. I'm delighted to welcome the Honourable Amarjeet Sohi, Minister of Infrastructure Canada, along with his officials, Ms. Kelly Gillis, Deputy Minister, Ms. Darlene Beaulieu, Assistant Deputy Minister, Corporate Services, and Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Mark Fortin, Assistant Deputy Minister, Programs Operations. We also have from the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, Mr. Andre Janot, Chief Operating Officer, and Ms. Linda Hurdle, Chief Financial Administrative Officer. Thank you all very much for coming. Mr. Sohi, the floor is yours for 5 minutes of opening remarks.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for introducing my officials. I also want to let you know that my parliamentary Mark Miller is here as well, joining us. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you. I have been invited to speak to you about Infrastructure Canada's Supplementary Estimates B, which were tabled in the House of Commons on October 26th. Through Supplementary Estimates B, Infrastructure Canada is requesting a net increase of $113.1 million in funding. The funding we requested includes operating funding for Infrastructure Canada to manage and administer Investing in Canada Infrastructure Plan, reprofiling of operating and capital funds from 2016-17 to 2017-18 for the new Champlain Bridge and Gordie Howe International projects, and a transfer of capital funds to the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority for remediation activities associated with a Canadian property. We're working with central agencies to reset the profiles of several programs, and this will result in moving funds from this year forward to future years to ensure that funds remain available for our partners as and when they require them. It is important for me to clarify that Infrastructure Canada's spending matches the pace at which our partners build their projects and submit claims to the Department for reimbursement. Once projects are approved by Infrastructure Canada, our partners can begin work immediately. The reprofiling of funds will ensure that funding is available in future years when it's needed by our project partners for their already approved projects. We will also continue to work closely with them to move their priorities forward and provide the flexibility necessary to meet their requirements. So to support the needs of communities across Canada, I'm proud to say that Infrastructure Canada is the lead in delivering our government's historic investments in infrastructure, which will invest more than $180 billion in communities across the country. We are working closely with other federal departments and in close partnership with provinces, territories, municipalities, Indigenous partners, and stakeholders organizations to make sure that our investments are responding to the needs of Canadians while also supporting our government's overarching priorities. We want to support projects that will create long-term growth, improve the sustainability of our communities, and grow and support the middle class. So what do these investments mean for Canadians? Over 800 older buses are being replaced with newer, more reliable, and more efficient vehicles. This is in addition to 835 new buses that have been ordered to expand existing transportation networks, offering up over 28,000 additional seats to commuters. 772 public transit accessibility initiatives to help ensure people with mobility challenges are able to get where they need to go safely and efficiently. 120 kilometers of new active transportation trails to support better integration with public transit networks. 3,817 new affordable homes have been built. We provided more than 115,000 families of low-income households with much-needed renovation and repairs. And over 2,275 small communities saw improvements to their water, wastewater, and stormwater management systems, leading to more modern and reliable services. We funded flood risk reduction projects in over 260 communities to better protect families, properties, and livelihoods. We also made significant progress on two major projects, Gordie Howe International Bridge and New Champlain Bridge. I will let my colleagues from WDBA speak more about the Gordie Howe International Bridge. For the New Champlain Bridge, we announced recently that we have introduced a series of measures to ensure we meet our December 2018 completion date, while also ensuring the existing bridge remains safe for travelers. My officials and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have about these. So in conclusion, I will hand things over to my colleagues before we take your questions, but I want to first thank you, the committee, for the opportunity to be here today to discuss our infrastructure plan. I'm very proud of the work that my department has been doing to build stronger middle class, sustainable and inclusive communities for all of us to live in. So thank you so much for once again for having us.
Thank you very much, Minister Soy. Mr. Janot.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for welcoming us here today. First, I should say that I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the WDBA, and I'm accompanied, as you said, by the Chief Financial and Administrative Officer. First, I want to talk a little bit about the supplementary estimates that you have in front of you. Of the $58.9 million requested through these estimates, $38.7 million are reprofiled operating and capital funds from 2016-17 to 2017-18. And $20.2 million is a transfer from Infrastructure Canada for remediation of the Canadian land. The funding is aligned with our priorities of what we call early works, utility relocations on both sides of the border, property acquisitions in Michigan, and the ongoing delivery of the P3 public-private partnership procurement process. As the Minister said, we are making real progress on the Gordie Howe International Bridge with more than $350 million in ongoing works at the Canadian and U.S. project sites. These activities include construction of an access road, placement of fill to address soil conditions, construction of stormwater management ponds, and utility relocations. In the U.S., on the U.S. side, these activities include acquisition of properties, environmental site work, and utility relocations. L'Autorité du Pont Windsor-Détroit
WDBA is undertaking these preparatory activities on both sides of the Canada-U.S. border now, so that our project be ready for our eventual private sector partner to begin construction as quickly as possible in 2018. Our partners at the Michigan Department of Transportation are responsible for U.S. property acquisition and have been actively working with business owners and residents. A year ago, when WDBA last appeared before this committee, our partners at the Michigan Department of Transportation had approximately 50% of required property under their control. Today, they have 80%. The department is adhering to a detailed timeline that will see property available for our eventual private sector partner when it is needed for construction. I will add that all required Canadian property has been acquired. We are currently at the second stage of our two-stage procurement process to identify a private sector partner to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain the bridge project. We have 3 highly qualified international proponent teams who are currently preparing their proposals in response to detailed technical and financial requirements. Next year, we will complete our procurement process. As these proposals will have been submitted, we will undertake a fair and rigorous evaluation process. A preferred proponent will be named, and we will finalize negotiations. This will enable our private sector partner to begin construction on the bridge in September 2018. Consistent with best practices, our entire procurement process is overseen by an independent fairness monitor who ensures transparency and fairness among the 3 proponents.
Detailed construction schedules and contract costs as part of their proposals. We look forward to the completion of the procurement process when we'll be able to present the construction schedule, including the bridge opening date and the contract value of the winning proposal. In doing all this work, we work daily with Infrastructure Canada, with the Michigan Governor's Office, with the Michigan Department of Transportation, the U.S. Federal Highway Administration, and Canadian and U.S. border agencies. We meet regularly with the cities of Windsor and Detroit, elected officials, community leaders, business owners, and so on. And we try hard, we devote a lot of energy to listening to our stakeholders. And that has been one of my priorities since becoming Chief Operating Officer, to meet a wide range of stakeholders and to demonstrate our commitments. In fact, on November 24, we will hold our 3rd annual public meeting in Windsor, and we're working on our annual public meeting on the U.S. side shortly thereafter. As Minister Sohi said, the Government of Canada is committed to building the Gordie Howe International Bridge, and we think this is evidenced by the work we've accomplished so far. We are on track to deliver this priority project. Thank you I thank the honourable member through you, Madam Chair, for having us here today.
Okay, thank you very much. On to our questions. Mr. Lobb.
Actually, I have a question.
Oh, do you want, I've got Mr. Lobb on the
Thank you.
first. Would you?
Sure, if you don't mind.
Sure, it's fine.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for appearing. I wanted to ask to Mr. Junot a couple questions. First, you're asking for $20 million for land remediation. I think that's pretty clear what that money's for. And you're asking for an additional $38.7 million. I assume that's an operating expenses. Is that correct?
The first point to make is that it's a result of a reprofiling. But let me ask Mrs. Hurdle to give you the specifics on this.
It's a mix of operating and capital dollars, and the reprofiles is mostly due to some of the utility work we're doing with Hydro One for utility relocation on the Canadian side, and some P3 procurement costs as well.
Okay. I think a lot of us are very concerned about this project. We had last summer the CEO of the authority be put on leave. We've had delays in this project. It was recently announced that the list, the selection from the short list of 3 contractors will not be made this year, but delayed well into next year, possibly even the fall of next year. We have we just recently had the approval, a permit being granted to the Detroit International Bridge Company to construct a new Ambassador Bridge. And when you put this all together, it could very well be the case that the new Ambassador Bridge will be opened before this particular bridge, the Gordie Howe Bridge. And in the context of declining cross-border traffic numbers in recent years, this is a cause for concern. Will we be, saddled with a bridge that opens after the new Ambassador Bridge, and one that it won't be able to generate the tolls necessary to pay for the costs of this bridge, which could be in the $4+ billion range? So maybe you could speak to the delays that are taking place and why it's taking so long, despite parliamentary appropriations for operating and capital costs that have been approved each and every time, why these delays are taking place, and how sure can we be that this bridge will be completed in the time that has been suggested, which is now 2023, 3 years after the original commitment was made, not just by the previous government, I might add, but also a commitment that was made by the board, by the Bridge Authority's board, and a commitment that was also made by the Michigan Governor's Office. So, maybe you can speak to these delays. Why are these delays taking place? What is being done to make sure there are no further delays in this bridge, particularly in the context of the permit that the current government granted for the new Ambassador Bridge?
Yeah. So I'll start. First of all, I want to be very clear that our government's commitment to Gordie Howe International Bridge is unwavering. We are committed to this bridge, and we will build this bridge. When the initial business analysis was done, there was always an understanding in the business case that you need two crossings. So the permitting related to Ambassador Bridge does not impact on the business case of Gordie Howe International Bridge.
Minister, with respect, when the Gordie Howe Bridge was proposed, it was in the context of an old Ambassador Bridge with only 4 lanes. And we are now looking at a new Ambassador Bridge with 50% more capacity that could very well be completed ahead of the Gordie Howe Bridge.
Yeah. So the Minister Juneau will speak to the details on that particular overall, but I can assure you that the business case is strong, and it still is that both crossings are needed based on their business case. On the delays, I want to assure you that we are taking a very responsible approach to this bridge. When we got into power, at that time, very nominal number of properties that are required to build this bridge were in possession. And now we have almost vast majority of the properties on the U.S. side under our control to start construction. So it's a more responsible approach, more appropriate approach, and less risky approach than the approach that was taken by the previous government. Mr. Juneau?
Thank you, Minister. Well, I don't need to add to the basic points the Minister said, but I will say that in respect of the timing of the work in next year, we've adopted a very careful timetable. And it's my priority to make sure that we are able to move through that timetable with our partners. The delay that you referred to was one that allowed us to do some work with the proponents on the timing and the costs, and we're satisfied that we got a positive result out of that delay. And so I'm confident that with the support of the government, the support of our other partners, as I said, we're devoting a lot of energy to working with them. I met myself, for instance, with Governor Snyder recently. The minister spoke to him last week, I believe, so that we've got our American partners on side to meet a demanding timetable, and I think we will meet it.
Okay, and just quickly, have you done any my time's up?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Badaway?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, thank you for being here this afternoon. I appreciate your presence here along with your staff, as well as members from the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority. Minister, last week the Canadian press reported that the government planned to reprofile about $2 billion in planned infrastructure spending to future years. With that, I know that some folks have speculated that this means funding will be lost. Can you explain how federal infrastructure dollars flow to these projects and are generally managed within the Infrastructure Canada program?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you so much for this question. Since taking office, we have approved more than 4,000 projects with a combined investment of provincial, federal, and municipal of $35 billion. So once we give approval to a project, we are committed to supporting that project, so construction can proceed immediately after the federal approval. As you know, it takes a number of years to build a particular infrastructure projects. So our proponents usually don't send us the invoices until the project is completed. So the money that we may have budgeted in one particular year may not be paid out in that particular year because we still are waiting for the invoices to come. So that's why you see the $2 billion being reprofiled from one year to the next year. It is very important for us to understand that $2 billion is committed to projects. It is not money that is not making a difference. Because of that approval, because of that commitment, jobs are being created. Communities are getting the benefit of having clean water to drink, or roads are being paved, or bridges are being constructed. So all that work is taking place, but we just have to wait until we get the invoices, then we pay out those commitments that we have made to our
and as that money is being left, you're essentially putting it into a reserve, protected by that project's that project, and of course the time frame that project would otherwise be paid out at. Now, when that money is sitting here, are we actually I'll use the words, taking advantage of investment opportunities, such as the percentage that we're getting back because the money is sitting in the bank, or is it just sitting there being stagnant?
That money is within the federal government's fiscal framework, and that is allocated to Infrastructure Canada on an annual basis based on the projection of how much funds we can flow. But there's always a lag time between the project approval, project construction, when we get the invoices, and at that time we pay the money. So money is there, money is committed to those particular projects, and because of that commitment, those projects do proceed, and that's the commitment we have to honor with our partners.
Minister, we're 2 years into the government's mandate, and with that, I'm wondering where things stand generally with the government's infrastructure plan to this point. It's very robust. We all recognize that, regardless of what side of the floor you're sitting on. All 338 ridings, I'm sure, are taking full advantage of the infrastructure funds that you've announced, regardless, again, what party or what part of the country they're from. What has been achieved to date, and what's still to come? For example, I know that you're now in the process of negotiating long-term bilateral agreements with the provinces and the territories. Is there anything you learned from Phase 1, and that is helping with negotiations and design of long-term programs and sustainable funding for those programs, as well as are we looking at and recognizing other residual benefits to those investments in terms of the outcomes that are being achieved from those individual investments, being at the municipal and provincial levels?
Yeah. So I am extremely proud of the work that we have been able to do and accomplish in partnership with the provinces, territories, and municipalities and non-profit sector with the Indigenous communities. I gave you the number of projects that we have approved, more than 4,000 projects with combined investment of $35 billion, and vast majority of those projects are currently underway. What our partners told us is that they want more of a collaborative approach to decision making and development of the criteria and the project approval, and streamline some of the process. We have done that. We are and still engaging with them. Another thing they told us is that kind of ad hoc, one-time infrastructure funding approach is not really a good approach. What they're looking for is long-term predictability. They're looking for long-term sustainable funding. That is why we, after listening to them, we have initiated discussions on a 10-year plan. We want to make sure that every province knows how much money they're going to receive from the federal government under these different funding envelopes in a way that they know, so they can start aligning their capital plans, their priorities with the federal capital plan and federal priorities. And that's exactly, I think, one thing we have learned to give them the sustainability and predictability.
And you see that aligning
Very much, Minister Sohi. On to Monsieur Aubin.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here today. We greatly appreciate your presence. Now, my first question is on a subject that you are doubtless aware of, Minister. We're hearing more and more throughout Canada from all Canadians who are having increasing difficulty accepting the fact that the very rich business people and businesses of this country are not paying their fair share of taxes and instead use tax havens. We've seen this entire matter of the Paradise Papers, which has added to this feeling. My question, thus, is in the implementation of this infrastructure bank, have you created methods to ensure that clients of this bank or participating companies, is there a way then to refuse to do business with large companies that take advantage of tax havens to send part of their profits abroad and to avoid their tax responsibilities?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you so much for that question. The reason that we have created the Canada Infrastructure Bank is to build more infrastructure that our communities need, along with giving them a historic amount of grant funding that we will continue to provide to them. We are tripling our investments, and we see that public sector and private sector can work together to undertake projects that are large, complex, that may not
Je
otherwise
comprends l'objectif, Monsieur le Ministre.
Yeah, I'm coming back to Infrastructure Bank.
And the goal, Minister?
We want to make sure that we have the right type of expertise in the bank that will allow us to always protect the public interest, to make sure that we have the right board, right chair, and right staff. And their goal is to make sure that whatever deal is structured, it is structured to make sure that the project is in the public interest, but the deal itself do not put dollars at risk, that we make sure that private sector is able to absorb their
Est-ce que je dois comprendre qu'il appartiendra?
Should I then understand that the board of directors will be responsible for creating measures to prevent doing business with businesses who use tax havens?
Will table its operational plan annually to the in the Parliament, and it also accountable to the Parliament through reporting. So there's accountability built into the structure that everything that bank undertakes can be scrutinized by the Parliament.
Dans un autre ordre d'idée, des documents du gouvernement.
On a different topic, government documents have shown that members of BlackRock, the largest asset manager in the world, work closely with the federal government in creating this infrastructure bank. So my question has two parts. Firstly, will BlackRock be authorized to bid for projects managed by the infrastructure bank? And then, if yes, will there be the appearance of a conflict of interest?
Through you, Madam Chair, and thank you once again for that question. In the lead up to setting the Canada Infrastructure Bank, we consulted with a wide range of stakeholders. We consulted with the unions, we consulted with pension funds, we consulted with the provinces, municipalities, we consulted with World Bank, with International Monetary Fund. So our wide consultation were very, very large and wide range. As far as which company can do business or which pension funds can bid on projects or work with the bank, That's a decision that will be made by the experts at the Canada Infrastructure Bank, but we will not give any preference to any organization or pension fund. It will be done in a way that it is that we are getting the best value for Canadian dollars and build the infrastructure that is needed for our communities.
Une minute. Dans le dernier.
In the last Parliamentary Budget Officer report, the PBO showed clearly that 70% of the funds earmarked in this program that you are describing as historic had still not been assigned. In your opening remarks, you also said that you were proud of having approved 4,000 projects, but these are 4,000 projects that have not necessarily yet started. Out of the money that has been assigned, and that's not the same thing as the money that's already part of projects that have started on the ground. So in that report of the PBO, has that 70% decreased? Does that mean that more projects have started?
Thank you so much. As I said earlier, the way infrastructure commitments are met is that we approve projects, we attach the funding to that particular project. Once the project is completed, then we pay out the invoices. So we are always we have to wait, and this is the choice that our proponents make. They can send us invoices early, we can pay their money out earlier, but it is easier for them to actually wait till the project is completed. That's why you see this gap between project approval and the flow of funds. But I can tell you that based on the information that has given to us by provinces and municipalities, out of the 4,000 projects we have approved, vast majority of them are underway. I gave you the example of close to 1,600 buses that are being bought. They're being bought because of federal dollars committed to those buses, right? And I talked about thousands of other water, wastewater.
Est-ce que le 70% a bougé?
Has that 70% changed at all?
Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Minister Sohi and staff. I want to focus on transit, which is a favorite subject of mine. I've been working in that sector, in fact, as Minister Sohi. And I want to start off with not so much the big city transit, but in fact quite the opposite. We've heard a few times of the difficulties and dangers involved with the absence or the growing absence of intercity transit services, in up north, especially in remote areas. I know that in British Columbia, along the Yellowhead Highway, also called the Highway of Tears, it's an issue not just of mobility, but of safety, especially for First Nations women. Has there been any thought, or more particularly, been any submissions for infrastructure funding to establish and operate that kind of service?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you so much for asking that question, because accessibility is very important, and the situation that you have described, just can't imagine the pain and heartache for those women and girls who didn't have access to transportation and got into in these very difficult circumstances. The federal government or Infrastructure Canada does not fund intercity bus service, because that is based on the commercial arrangement. So companies like Greyhound, they are responsible providing that service. But we encourage bus service, and we consult, and we do consultation with Indigenous communities and rural communities. What I can share with you is that the investments that we're making into transportation networks within the cities and helping provinces with municipal infrastructure and municipal public transit system is freeing up resources for provinces to actually look at creative ways of providing intercity transportation system. In the case of British Columbia, I understand that BC Transit was able to expand their service to link rural communities because of the resources that we made available to them for other within city service. So that freed up resources that we're able to use with to provide service into areas where we don't have an area of responsibility.
Another area has to do with commuter rails, and I'm thinking specifically of some of our major corridors, which also, of course, have to carry trade. And in British Columbia, we're certainly looking at growth in trade, which is obviously a very good thing, but also growing demand for commuter rail services. And, one may choke out the other. And in fact, on the grand scheme of things, trade will win. Which would be a huge barrier to the growth of commuter rail in a large and spread out area like Metro Vancouver. Have you and the Transportation Minister been talking about some approach that could make both things happen?
Yeah. Through you, Madam Chair. I know Minister Garneau is working with the VRAL on that particular area, and this within his department, and he'll be able to give you more fulsome answer what is being what steps are being taken. Where we see the potential for expansion of rail service or intermunicipal, interprovincial public transportation service is the possibility where provinces and municipalities can identify projects to be looked at through the Canada Infrastructure Bank, right? I think we see a potential in that, or cities and provinces working together to expand that service. We are always open for discussions with them how Infrastructure Canada, Transport Canada, provinces and municipalities can work together to expand options for mobility choices for people.
With respect to bus procurement, has there been discussions with the municipal authorities about ensuring that the buses they do buy are low floor and accessible to people with disabilities, and that there's some sharing of available funding toward custom transit? That with an aging population and the need for that kind of service, especially as we ask seniors to age in place but still access the services they need.
Yeah, as I said earlier in my remarks, the number of accessibility transit projects that we have funded in Phase 1 investments speaks to the commitment of provinces and municipalities to make sure that the transit fleet is accessible. So they're buying low floor buses, they're buying electrical buses, they're buying buses that maybe community buses that go into smaller communities. They're also buying buses that are accessible through wheelchairs. So they have wheelchair ramp. So paratransit buses are also being included into the fleet, and we are seeing great improvements in improving accessibility for communities. And this is something that absolutely we are passionate about as well.
Very much, Minister Sohi. On to Mr. Fraser.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, Minister. Actually, we've got a natural segue on the issue of small community transit. First and foremost, I think there was a lot of fear around the initial plan to invest in infrastructure because a lot of people back home in the small communities that I represent fear that big cities are going to be a sponge when it comes to infrastructure money. I was extraordinarily pleased to see specific money set aside for small communities, the $2 billion Rural and Remote Community Fund, when you announced Phase 2. One of the struggles that we have, a key part of my riding depends not on municipally owned public transit, but instead nonprofit groups that have community transit initiatives. These are funded by municipalities, but not owned by municipalities, so they don't qualify for the public transit funding. Would projects like this potentially be eligible under the Small Communities Fund so we can get people moving, help seniors, people living in poverty, and people living with disabilities?
Through you, Madam Chair, we are very proud to be establishing this $2 billion dedicated funding for rural communities. This is the largest amount of investment being made into rural, northern, and small communities that we have seen in the recent history. Having said that, those rural communities still qualify for funding, other funding streams, so they can get support on that. On the criteria on the non-profit, I'm going to ask my staff to comment on that.
Thank you.
Mark.
Thanks for your question. For those kind of project itself, there's many other opportunities in terms of funding. There's a gas tax that the municipality can use, and the small community fund itself. But for the big transit one, we're talking about different categories here itself.
So I'm not thinking about the public transit fund. I'm thinking about the rural and remote communities infrastructure fund. Will there be flexibility in the negotiations with provinces if they say a priority for us is to support a different kind of infrastructure that may not be typical in other provinces, like community transit? Would that be a subject of negotiation?
Yeah, we'll have to see the type of the project that we're talking about, ownership and that kind of stuff that needs to be looked at.
Okay, and another question on small communities. One of the great struggles that I have, and your parliamentary secretary will be familiar with this, there's a community, Moser River, where his father was born, that falls within a very rural area of a large urban municipality. So Halifax Regional Municipality is hundreds of thousands of people, but there's certain communities that have hundreds or potentially a couple thousand people. There's a struggle here because there's real communities with maybe 400, 1,000, 2,000 people. They'll have a hospital, but they may not qualify for this the small community fund. Is this a problem that you'd be willing to sort of sit down and work through with me to talk about how they might access funding that's designed for small communities that, due to an odd municipal arrangement, they currently wouldn't be eligible for?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for that question. The current definition that is within the Building Canada Fund of a small community is a community that is less than 100,000 population. Right? Smaller provinces have only a number of communities that are larger than that. So what we want to do is sit down with the provinces and really understand how do they see a small community, how do they define a rural community, and create that flexibility for every province to see what role federal government can play in supporting those communities. So we are not going to be defining what a small community should look like from a federal perspective. I think that cookie cutter approach is not really effective, has not worked. So we're going to sit down. We'll be flexible in finding more appropriate ways of supporting those rural and northern and small communities.
Thank you. And just before I ask my next question, I just want to say I sincerely appreciate that. There are federal programs right now that are designed for rural communities that benefit communities 10 times the size of some I represent that can't access the same one. So I do appreciate your comments. Finally, if I have time, Madam Chair, the timing of the agreements around Phase 2 with the provinces could potentially present a challenge. Some of the warden of the Antigonish County, for example, raised with me that if we roll out programs that don't kick in till the summer, it can be more expensive to fund projects because the contractors are all busy. I understand you're negotiating these things quite soon, and if we get a deal, say in the winter when things are slower, this might enable small communities to build one extra project. What's the rough timeline of the infrastructure agreements so we might be able to take advantage of this cycle?
So Phase 1 investments are being made now, and long-term plan, we have started negotiations, and our goal will be to conclude those negotiations by first quarter of next year. Please keep in mind that this is a 10-year plan, so we want to I think it will be better for provinces and municipalities to know how much money they're going to get so they can start planning. So there's no pressure such as the one that you are describing. That pressure exists when there's only short-term funding available, but if a long-term consistent approach, then those pressures may not be as prevalent.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sohi. On to Mr. Chong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a brief question for Minister Sohi. You're asking for a significant increase in operating funds for the Champlain Bridge, $61 million. Can you assure the committee that the bridge is going to be completed on time in December of next year?
Absolutely. I can tell the committee that we have taken a number of steps in in working with the proponent of that particular projects to ensure that the project actually gets built on time.
Okay.
I want to also assure that that existing Champlain Bridge is safe for commuters, and we are very committed to that.
Thank you, Minister. I'd like to focus back on the Windsor-Detroit crossing again. You know, I am dumbfounded why the government would approve a permit for the construction of a second bridge, the new Ambassador Bridge, when the owner of the existing bridge has fought Canadians' interests each and every step of the way for the last decade or more, whether it was failing to keep the existing bridge in a good state of repair, or whether it was fighting us on the construction of the Gordie Howe crossing. You know, I'm dumbfounded why we would approve a second Ambassador Bridge. We have 4 lanes crossing the Detroit-Windsor crossing right now, the St. Clair River. We're now going to go from 4 lanes to 12 lanes, a tripling of capacity at a time when traffic is plummeting. You know, the latest data that I've looked at shows that at the Windsor-Detroit Ambassador Bridge crossing, traffic dropped from 12.2 million cars and trucks in 2000 to 6.8 million cars and trucks last year. And this is not an isolated phenomenon. At all of the border crossings between Ontario and upstate New York, between Ontario and Michigan, traffic is down. So in that context, I'm dumbfounded why we would approve a second bridge crossing that puts at risk Canadian taxpayers. You know, the latest rumors are that the bridge is going to cost upwards of $4.8 billion. The only way we get to recoup these costs is through the tolls that are applied on this bridge. The original modeling was for the tolls to recoup the cost over a period of 3 decades, and that toll revenue is at risk. And so, you know, my one question to Mr. Juneau, through you, Madam Chair, is: has the authority done modeling to protect, modeling on the new numbers, on the new border crossing numbers in light of the second bridge crossing? And does it show that the government is still going to recoup its cost, or does it show that the government is going to be on the hook for billions of dollars to pay for this Gordie Howe Bridge?
Before Mr. Juneau answers that question, as I said earlier, the business analysis done by the previous administration, one of which you were part of, demonstrated that there's a need for 2 crossings at Windsor-Detroit to improve the trade, and based on that analysis, we are proceeding ahead with this bridge. We feel that it is necessary. As far as the owners of Ambassador Bridge taking federal government to court, people make decisions for various reasons, but we are very proud that we are succeeding in winning every challenge that came our way. We have won that challenge.
Well, Minister, with respect, I agree with you that the analysis done by Wilbert Smith and Associates showed that there was supposed to be a 4% increase in vehicular traffic crossing that border from period of 2016 to 2025. But clearly the facts have changed. Clearly traffic is down significantly even last year when your government was in power. And so why in September of this year the government would issue a permit for the construction of a second Ambassador Bridge that increases the capacity from 4 to 6 lanes, it is beyond me. I don't understand it. We're not talking about $100 million bridge. We're talking about, the latest estimates are that this Gordie Howe Bridge could cost $4.8 billion. And so, this to me could turn into a financial burden for Canadian taxpayers, because they could be on the hook for paying billions of dollars without any revenue stream to recoup it. And the other thing I point out is the other thing that I'm dumbfounded about, and this is not necessarily laid at your feet, Minister, but the Detroit International Bridge Company, now that it has this permit to proceed with the second bridge, they estimate they're going to build the whole thing for $1 billion US. And on a Canadian dollar basis, that's about $1.3 billion. Why can they build a bridge for about 1.3 billion Canadian dollars, And we're looking at 4.8 for up to 4.8 for this Detroit, for this Gordie Howe Bridge, and $4+ billion for the Champlain Bridge. Like, it just, as ordinary people look at this and come to the conclusion that governments can't get things done. And I empathize with that sentiment when I see these kinds of numbers vis-a-vis a private corporation who frankly has worked against Canadians' interest, getting this project done for a much lower cost than what we seem to be able to do as government. So, that's just a second point I'd make.
Well, I to you, ma'am, I can't really comment on the cost difference because, we will know what the cost of Gordie Howe International Bridge is going to be once we close the financial deal. So until it's just mere speculation, what it's going to cost. As far as the permitting of the Embassed Bridge is concerned, it is given with very stringent conditions, which includes demolition of the existing bridge. And also there are other conditions related to that. It's my understanding that as a government, if you cannot unreasonably withhold a permit from a proponent that wants to build a piece of infrastructure, and that's why this permit was granted. But I can assure you that our commitment to Gordie Howe is unwavering. It is based on the business analysis that was done, and we believe in that business analysis, and that's why we're proceeding ahead with it.
Mr. Iacono.
Minister, for being here today. A few weeks ago, there was a lot of news about both the new and old Champlain bridges. I want to ask about the new bridge. And what is the government doing to ensure the new bridge will be built on time?
Yeah, so once again, I want to assure everyone that that our government is taking every step to ensure that the existing bridge remains safe, and it is safe. And I'm very proud of our Montreal office and how hard they're working on this. I'm also very proud of JCCBI. And how they look after this bridge. And as far as the making sure the new bridge is on time, we have taken, our Infrastructure Canada has taken a number of steps to, in partnership with the SSL, who are the project proponent. The new shift is being added. There's enhanced hours of construction. That are being implemented, and with those steps, we are very confident that we will be striving to have the bridge open by December of 2018.
Parfait, merci. Beaucoup d'encre coule dans les médias sur l'état du.
Thank you. A lot has been said in the media about the state of the Champlain Bridge, which is raising concerns in the users of the bridge. What is Infrastructure Canada doing to guarantee the safety of users of the bridge while finalizing the agreement for the new bridge? I know you covered that a bit in your first answer, but what are the concrete actions that are being taken by Infrastructure Canada in this file?
Is the organization that is responsible for the maintenance of and the operation of the existing bridge. And we have given them the appropriate support and the resources to make sure that bridge remains safe, and it is safe. There's no concern whatsoever related to that. But on the same time, we want to make sure that we build the new bridge on time. That is why I talked about us working with SSL, and I'm going to ask Marc Fontaine to talk about a little bit in more detail about the steps that are being taken.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Alors, pour répondre à votre question, c'est la Corporation des ponts.
In answer to your question, it's the JCCBI that is dealing with the administration of the current Champlain Bridge, and they have a current maintenance plan in their business plan, and they have maintenance measures in place, like every year. Despite the fact that a new bridge is being built, they feel that they have the necessary funding and activities in the next few months to continue with that maintenance while continuing to supervise the current Champlain Bridge.
Thank you.
A minute.
A minute, okay. Well, I think I'll preface my comments with a thank you because Mississauga has actually received $22 million from the gas tax fund for 2016, 2017, and 2018. I know my riding alone's actually received $1 million through the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund, and there's other funding that we received, so I know Mississauga and my riding appreciate that. Now, in regards to my question, I believe you referred to it as reprofiling or repurposing of funds that haven't been paid out. Now, the way I see it, that this just seems like good governance. If you've allotted funds to a project, and as you referred to it as pay to pace, if we're measuring it over a year, that's not really an accurate measure now, is it? Because these things take over a year to be completed. Could you just speak to this very quickly, please?
Through you, Madam Chair. Absolutely, we want to make sure that we pay out our invoices after reconciling the information, and it takes a number of years to build a project. That's why there's always lag time, and you're absolutely right. This is a more responsible approach for us to take.
Okay, that's the only question I had.
I would like to know what bridge is this?
That's the New Champlain.
Is that the New Champlain?
This is the New Champlain Bridge, showing you the state of or the stage of construction where it is.
Okay.
It is now. So it's proceeding really.
And this is Gordie Howe?
This is the groundwork being done at Gordie Howe International Bridge to show our commitment that we're proceeding ahead on that bridge too.
Thank you to everybody. I'm sorry, Mr. Ben, but we're out of time. We have to vote on this. I'm sorry that you didn't get another opportunity there. So pursuant to Standing Order 81.5, the committee will now dispose of the supplementary estimates B for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2018. Under the Minister of Transport, vote 1B. Under Canadian Air Transport Security Authority, votes 1B, 5B, 15B, and 20B. Under the Department of Transport, and vote 1B under Marine Atlantic Incorporated. Under the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, vote 1B and 5B under Office of Infrastructure of Canada, and vote 1B under Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority. Do I have unanimous consent to deal with all of the motions in all of the votes in one motion? Yes, thank you. Shall all the votes under the Minister of Transport and the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities for the supplementary estimates B 2017-18 carry? On division, please read it. Okay, on division? Okay. Shall I report these votes to the House? That was a yes? You're very quiet. Yes, on division? Yes. All right, therefore we will move on. Thank you very much. We'll move adjournment. Thank you to the Minister and his staff. We look forward to the next opportunity that we can have you back at our committee. Move adjournment.